I'm here with the world's greatest guard retainer, Ariel Tabak, and we're going to cover 5 things you should not do when trying to keep your guard.
One of the most common mistakes you'll see, especially in the gi, is people looking to pull a guard without establishing some kind of frame before trying to pull their opponent in. So a perfect example of this is, let's say if I had like a collar sleeve, or even in the scenario of maybe a no-gi kind of guard, if I'm going to go like with a clinch and a tricep grip and I'm going to try and step my foot onto my opponent's hip, if I don't actually connect my feet to the hip and shoulder as frames, if I just let my feet kind of dangle in a random position, it's actually going to be quite detrimental to me to actually be pulling my opponent towards me, because I have no frame and I can't stop them from closing distance. So if I start to just fall back like this, my opponent can start to go right past my guard. So it's really important that when I look to establish my guard, that I'm actually trying to connect my foot in a spot where I can actually frame and maintain distance with my opponent. So in this scenario, if I'm going for foot on the hip and foot on the shoulder, now it's going to be a lot harder for Lockie to move past my guard. I can stay tracking him with my feet and my body.
Putting the feet on the floor. Okay, so you'll see people, I think it's just like a natural way people want to move, when, especially if they're new, is to kind of like feet on the floor, to hip escape, or to face your opponent. You see people doing things like this. Okay, and although it might be a natural way to move, it's the wrong way to do it in a guard retention scenario, because you're opening up a big space between your knee and your chest where your opponent can start to pass. Okay, so we, as a rule, pretty much never put your feet on the floor if you're in any sort of open guard or somewhat of a distance guard. We want to be keeping our feet nice and tight with our knees to our chest, and we can move using actions such as the high pummel, or using our elbows on the mat, or pushing off our opponent to help ourselves spin, rather than putting our feet on the ground.
Another common mistake that a lot of people make when retaining their guard is letting their spine twist. In other words, letting their lower body face one direction while their upper body is still facing the other direction. So in a case where Lockie is starting to bullfight at me, if I'm looking at maintaining my upper body facing Lockie when my lower body is being turned away so that I can frame at Lockie, it's actually going to be a lot harder for me to create a stable framing structure because my spine is twisted. It's going to be really hard for me to actually keep Lockie away when I'm in this twisted position here. So instead, we want to make sure that our upper body follows our lower body anytime our spine is twisted.
Framing late. So frames are really important. I'm talking here just about arm frame. Obviously, we always want to have our legs framed, but often you'll see your legs get cleared, so Ari's starting to pass, and someone starts to frame about here. Okay, and my arms are bent, and this is very late. This is going to be disastrous for me. Okay, so your arms should be there ready to frame. As soon as your legs are cleared, you need an outstretched frame, and you need to connect to that early. The quicker and better you get this, like really I want my legs back in front. I don't want to be holding Ari off with my arms. So I really want like an extended straight arm frame, which is going to give me the most room to start to pummel my legs back in front and start to recover. The last point is allowing or accepting people advancing through layers of the guard. So we tend to think of in layers in terms of I've got my feet, the line of my feet, I want to keep him at the line of my feet. If he passes the line of my feet, I've got my knees in front. If he passes the line of my knees, then I'm trying to use my upper body frames and kind of build back from that. And what you'll see is that a lot of people will just allow or accept someone stepping over a leg and having their foot no longer available to push. Now, Ari's going to go through why that makes it a considerably worse position for me to allow.
So if we look at the knee cut scenario, once I've stepped over Lockie's right leg, he can no longer frame me away with this right leg. He can obviously use his inside De La Higa hook to bump me up, but he's essentially lost the frame. Okay, all he now has is his top leg to frame me. So if Lockie tried to fight a bit harder to stop me from stepping over his leg, I actually haven't been able to initiate my guard pass. I haven't actually been able to progress through my knee cut. So this is a really important thing to take note of.
And I think on that, I think some people choose guards that are quite late in the layers, as a first guard. For example, deep half guard. Like you get some people who pull through into deep half guard as a first layer. And yes, I can be effective from here, but I'm also like one movement, like one foot slipping, I'm that far away from being passed. Okay, so I think having the skills and the ability to keep people at a distance guard and be able to play from here, and then having backup guard, like it's okay to have backup guards from there. If I'm good at playing from here, or maybe like one layer less, but then having the backup where if you happen to get quite deep, that I could start pulling through into some sort of half guard or so on, I think is the best strategy to go with. Just to expand on that, let's say Ari is a half guard player. If I know that is what he wants, if that's his main attack, I'm going to, as the person on top, I'm going to take a posture that makes it difficult to use half guard. So if I know that Ari doesn't play any other guards, he's just going to go to half guard, I'm going to get low, I'm going to be ready to block an underhook, and he's coming in now, he has to get past my head, he has to get past me pummeling for the underhook and trying to get out of the legs here. So this is very difficult for him to actually play his half guard because I know that's all he's doing. If Ari developed a strong, for example, open guard or De La Riva game, and he keeps pushing me back here, and I keep having to fight here, I might try to force myself into half guard because that's on the way. It's part of the progression to pass. So I might force myself there, but I'll be very out of position for the half guard when I do that. So if I wanted to force into half guard from here, I'm going to be happy going like this. I'll come into a knee cut here like this, for example. But now look, I've given him a big gap. It's a very different posture to how I would have approached if I knew he was just playing half guard. If he plays De La Riva or a good open guard and I came in like this, I would get nowhere. Okay? I'm not going to even get anywhere near past the first level. So it kind of makes me, by having a good open guard, it makes me have to try to deal with that and enter into the later stage guards out of position, him having more chance of attack. So check out our instructional, the guard retention anthology via the link provided.